We've done nothing but conquer ever since we left our homeworld for the stars. We swept through countless systems and planets to fill our hunger. We've encountered many different species. To us, they seemed intelligent, but none of that ever mattered, as we always prioritized our needs and desires. We consumed and accumulated material and biomass as we went from world to world, growing our power. We've never stumbled across another life form quite like us, none that could understand us. A group of small insect-like forms with 4 short legs skittered past in a hurry. Clicking sounds can be heard from them as they work in perfect unison. The Queen watches them as a loud bang rings off in the distance. She, however, is unfazed. With every new planet, we gained a sense of pride and confidence. Every new planet meant one more hive world to add to our swarm. With every species we consumed, we gained technology and science that only continued to fuel our superiority. Or so we thought. Where did I go wrong? Her mind races. Distant gunfire can be heard as more of the small creatures run past, this time seeming slightly worried. Why did things end up like this? Why is our new enemy such a challenge? What makes them different? She walks forward through the hallway. The walls seem to be covered in organized metal and biomass. How is it possible for those lowly life forms to challenge us? What makes them different? There has to be a way to stop them. Before all of us. She pauses. As she continues to walk, a large room can be seen in front of her. One of the insects approaches. It's much larger than the previous ones before and looks to have 2 large claws facing its front. It bows and proceeds to follow her. Another large explosion goes off. This one much closer than the others. After she enters the larger room, she sits. Her eyes begin to shut as her consciousness seemingly transfers to one of her hive troops. Explosions begin to ring and bullets pierce the air. An unrecognizable shout can be heard. It's an agonizing sound to hear. "Cover fire! I need cover fire!" the creature shouted. The voices these creatures make are despicable, she thinks. An explosion goes off next to her as limbs and debris go flying. She's flung backwards, landing in a large crater. As she looks up, she sees one of her larger hive guards flinging these enemy creatures into the air. They are so fragile, she thinks to herself. It's hard to imagine these things are pushing us back. She continues to watch the hive guard, praising her ingenuity with the creature she created. As she praises its ferociousness and combat capability, she pauses. One of the creatures shouts again in an agonizing tone. "We've got a berserker here. Where's my orbital support? The fragile creatures who wear these weird garments, that carry around these weirdly shaped weapons and tools, just keep coming." She wonders why or how they are able to face such formidable opponents. Why do they come running one after the other? For just a moment I feel a sense of sympathy. Are they even scared, she wonders. One after the other they keep coming, each one being torn apart. It wasn't uncommon for us to occasionally face conflict with the races we invaded, but in most cases we either defeated them or they fled. It was rare for another race to successfully defend against us, and most would just run. But these new life forms were different. They never ran and they fought viciously. Even if it meant their individual sacrifice, they would gladly give it. Suddenly a red laser fell from the sky right onto the large hive guard. A large bang, and not even a second later, an explosion pierced through it. The hive guard collapsed as a large gaping hole beamed through its back and out its chest. I watched as it happened again. And again. A strange feeling came over me that I haven't felt before. One of the strange creatures started to run towards me. The hive troop I was seeing through wasn't moving. even giving it commands proved to be fruitless. I could sense its fear as it stood frozen. The creature looked straight at me. They all looked the same to me, or at least they used to. For the first time, this one looked different. Maybe it was its gaze, or maybe I was going crazy. I opened my eyes, severing the transmission with me and my insect drone. But I couldn't unsee the creature's face. His eyes were completely terrified. But then why? Why did he run towards us? A couple of days passed as we continued the invasion. I took an interest in this species. This was strange for me, as I've never taken the time to understand another life form before. As I watched through my hive drones, I learned their movements, tactics, and even some of their language. Their language is still a painful sound for me, but less so than before. The way they acted was strange. They were mostly unified, but it seemed to me as if they also acted on their own accord. They were clumsy and often failed at simple tasks. They were nothing like the power of me and my swarm. I remembered looking through one of my hive scouts. We watched one of the creature's nests. It was metallic and without pattern. Quite an unsightly structure, I thought to myself. So unorganized, and they even had rooms that seemed to serve no purpose. All they did in these rooms was sit, laugh, and use these weird-looking small objects. These objects didn't seem to be a threat and did not serve any strategic advantage. So why did they use them? I wondered. As I watched, I learned of this species' name. They called themselves humans, and from the information we gathered, their technology only seemed to be in the realm of Tier B, an intermediate stage of classification. They've developed space travel and have even occupied quite a number of systems. They had more weapons than I've ever seen from another species, but their weapons were crude and had many different types and versions. I found their entire existence strange and unlikely. Whole groups of them wouldn't even contribute to the war effort and would mind their own survival. Why did they act individually, and why was it working compared to us and our unified consciousness? Their military, however, was impressive for such a lowly creature. They had a well-organized command structure, and for the most part their troops followed orders surprisingly well. But I also noticed how temperamental they were. They were very strict on their own kind. They resorted to harsh punishment against the ones in their species who would not follow their rules, and they would consistently kill their own, sometimes even without noticeable reason. But there was another side of them that I saw, a side of them that made me question my own existence and my own purpose. It's funny, actually. I've never once thought about why I exist. Well, until I met the humans. As crude as they were, they had a very compassionate side, a selfless side. I remember looking through one of my command troops during the invasion I launched against one of their first planets. In the grand scheme of things, this planet fell into my grasp with ease. But as I watch this species more, I can't help but remember this planet in particular. The humans there did not stand a chance, and even as I began cleansing the surface, they still resisted. Over many battles on this planet. I remember a specific instance from that campaign that has haunted me to this day. Many of the humans who did not fight were fleeing. At the time, I did not distinguish their race between their military and non-combatants. They were all the same to me. My swarms would run rampant across their nests and structures, cleansing everything. During one of these swarm operations, I saw a large group of their non-combatants fleeing. After my command troop analyzed the situation, it was deemed that the operation would lead to few swarm casualties. So I sent the command signal to commence the attack. My units were held back by their resistance forces for just enough time so that their non-fighters were able to board one of their large freight vessels. This vessel had no armaments and was defenseless. Further command analysis deemed this battle won. The vessel would not have enough time to escape, is what we thought. I sent the command for one of my hive battleships to engage. As it grew closer to the freight ship, I sensed fear from my command unit on the hive ship, and without any warning, the connection I had with it had severed. I took control of a drone on the surface to see what had happened. With shock, I saw my hive ship plummeting to the ground. The command bridge was utterly decimated. I looked in the opposite direction to see that the human freight ship wasn't there anymore. It had escaped. I analyzed my drone's memories and found that a smaller human ship flew straight through my hive ship's blind spot from the left, striking the command structure. The human ship was decimated in the collision, but it inflicted enough damage to the control bridge and hull to render my battleship useless. As more of my ship took fire, several of the engines shut down as it fell to the ground. The damage was catastrophic to my forces. Millions of my swarm were decimated by the debris. As I continued recounting those events, a couple of my smaller swarm units skittered by. It made me wonder why it was that all of us were connected in this way. I know every one of their thoughts and experiences. I can even control their movements and desires. The more I thought, the more I wondered what it would be like to converse with a life form that was individual from me. Over the countless millennia, I haven't talked with one different life form than myself. This thought depressed me. Many of my command units sensed this depression and sent compassionate signals to me. But it did not matter. As I studied the humans, I learned that the human ship sacrificed was a carrier-class starship. It housed roughly a couple thousand armed humans and several high-ranking military officers. They sacrificed their military troops for their worker drones, I thought to myself. This was strange to me, as my fighter troops were always more important to me than my workers and non-combatants. Why would such valuable personnel be sacrificed so that their non-essential species be allowed to live? There were many circumstances where humans sacrificed themselves for one another. The more I thought about it, the more fascinated I became with their species. What were their goals and motives? Why did they do those things? Why did they care so much for each other? I started to make comparisons between our two species. I realized that we are as different as we are similar, but it still didn't explain their strategic flaws and tactics. Shouldn't they understand the value of their military personnel over the rest? As I thought more about it, I realized that I was interested in them because of their flaws. The more I analyzed, the more I wondered, are they flaws? What might be wrong or a mistake to me might not be to them. The more I pondered on this, the more I began to respect the humans, and even envy them.